What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. We have an episode today where we're going to be talking about launching business and maximizing it for success. We are sitting down with the CEO of Think Results Marketing, Jenn LeBlanc. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you also are the author of Launching for Revenue, which, as I flipped through here, I was very impressed by the amount of different aspects of business that you cover in here, which is really important. In the book, what was really great, like I said, was like this example. I mean, you even bookmarked it here for me. This redesign that you have of like a logo. Just these very simple ways that you can attract more eyeballs, decrease complexity, increase relatability. Yeah, these different things. And then you also are talking about things like the simple message that when you make a post on social media, add a photo.
Exactly.
These are very simple tips, and you're really helping out because what is it, 92%
of high-tech companies fail. High-tech, high-growth companies fail.
In 2 years.
Yeah,
in 2 years?
In 2 years.
Wow.
Yes, and then most products fail. It's like 38 to 55%. It depends on which research you look at, but anywhere from like 38% of product launches or company launches to 92% fail. So a large proportion of them fail. And as a scientist by training, I sort of came to marketing with the idea that everything can be studied and dissected. So, okay, how come some companies are successful? Because clearly there's new companies, new products, new services on the market. What's the difference between the companies that get on the market and those that fall by the wayside? I had to know the answer. So I've spent the last 20 years sort of stapling myself to that and trying to understand the difference. And then I isolated that there's 10 elements. And so that's what's in that book. And I wanted it to be very tactical and practical so that people could really just go through, and if they're working on their website, they can just dive into the website chapter. And there's examples of what to do and what not to do, right? So that's really important, is not only what should you be doing, but what are some things you should avoid. And then at the end of each chapter, there's a self-assessment where they can gauge where they are within each one of those elements. It's meant to be very much a workbook. Someone asked me today if I did an audiobook, and I'm like, it's not going to work as an audiobook. Like, it's a pen and paper book.
Yeah. And then they're doing these along the way. They're filling in sections. They're challenged, like you were teaching me earlier. They're looking at themselves in the mirror objectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because basically what we've found through our research, whether it was our own proprietary research or my own studying of other companies and then our clients and launches that were successful, not successful, the difference, basically the companies that failed missed on some simple things on one of those 10 elements. And very small things, like you said.
And these, and it can be the complexity of a logo, not enough social posting, not enough community engagement. It's
not rocket science.
Team member that's
in the wrong role.
Yeah.
So it may have been the right person at the time, and now your company has changed and grown, and that person's not necessarily in the right role. That's going to hold you back.
Yeah.
And constantly evaluating that process. Team is really hard.
Team's really hard.
As you grow, things change. People change. What may have been comfortable and exciting for them 2 years ago may not be now.
Yes.
So that's something to evaluate and check in with your team.
Yeah, and then the hiring based on values.
Yes.
Based on mission alignment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big believer in not necessarily hiring on skills, because those can be taught, but hiring on the heart-centeredness, and do they really have the vision that you have? Are they getting behind that vision? Do they have the passion for what you're doing? Because work can be tough sometimes. So skills I can teach, passion, integrity, ethics, honesty, I can't teach those things. They have to come to me with those things. This is when I'm talking about hiring for my own team.
Yes.
For sure.
So these launch elements, you have the offering, which is what your product, service, or company is.
Right. So it could be a product, it could be a service, it could be the company itself. When companies are young, typically that's melded together, right? The product and the company, or the service and the company, are really the same thing. For larger companies, there's the company brand, there's product brands, they may have service brands. So it depends on, this can work for any of those instances. So we call it the offering, just to make it broad enough.
Broad enough, exactly. And then your positioning.
Positioning is number 2, so that's really important, because really if your positioning is not working, nothing else is going to work, in my opinion.
And this is kind of the differentiating factor. How are you
Right.
positioning yourself in the market?
Understanding your persona is really key to that. So I just did a workshop this morning, who are you really talking to? Who are the decision makers for your company or your product or service? And then who are the influencers, and do you really understand them in the sense of not only do you know what do they hear, what do they see, what do they experience, but getting inside their heads. So we have an empathy map that we use to really walk through that process, to sort of walk around the person and then step inside their experience based on what you know from kind of their outside world.
That's
so you
neat.
really understand them.
So you walk around them, meaning you're really trying to see them from all these different ways, all these
Right.
variables about
What do
their,
they hear from other people? What do they see? What kind of media do they consume?
yeah.
What do they listen to in terms of media?
And this is like the psychometric analysis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Knowing that really clearly then allows you to step inside, and say, okay, now I understand what their pains are and what their gains are. And how do we then drive messages that are going to resonate with that target audience?
Yeah. And so then you have name, logo, website.
Those
okay.
are the holy trilogy, I call those.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, because they sort of go together, right?
Yeah.
So the name, the logo, and the website typically are, kind of a trilogy package.
Yep.
Naming is really important. I see a lot of really big mistakes on naming. The logo is key, to the point you mentioned earlier, having a logo that's just really clear and simple. People often ask a logo to do way too much heavy lifting, is my experience.
That's interesting that you say that. People are trying to cram their whole company.
Whole brand story into the logo,
yeah.
right? And that is partly the job of the name. It's partly the job of the logo. It's partly the job of the website. It's partly the job of the experience that you're creating. What is that experience you want to create for your target market? But people try to put all of that into the logo, and then it's got 17 elements and 5 different colors. It's just so complicated you can't even read it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I see that a lot. Yeah.
And the idea of reductionism is actually kind of really a good principle for a logo.
Absolutely.
Less is more.
We're looking for 2, 3, maybe 4 elements in a logo.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, I've tried as much as possible to sort of break this whole process down into a science where you can check the box,
Yeah.
right? There's also an art piece to this that's hard
course.
to sort of,
Yeah.
distill into that. Again, I was talking about this morning to an incubator that I was working with, and I said, for example, your logo can hit all of the 4 check marks that we have in our self-assessment, and then I would give it like a couple of bonus points, because if it's hitting all of those executional points really well, then it needs a bonus set of points, because then the sum is typically greater than the whole, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So that's something that there's an art to this as well that's a little hard to distill into a book.
Yeah.
I've tried.
Yeah. On the art side of things especially.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this other pillar, I mean, it seems as though the name and the website go hand in hand.
Yeah.
That there's got to be something catchy about the name or the website. It's got to be something that sticks in people's brains.
Right.
And of course, we've seen this throughout history with different companies and logos and websites, but ones that kind of have missions that are related to providing humanity with some sort of long-term sustainable utility, value, something like that, are the ones that millennials and Gen Zs are really latching onto and believing in more so than before, because I mean, we don't want to see more of these companies that are trying to take the attention economy and take advantage of us, or
absolutely. This
same
is
thing.
a good thing. This is a very good thing. Like, bring it on.
yeah, but and it's like, how do we maximize all the young companies that are coming into the world? So you have sales strategy, content strategy, and social strategy. Yeah.
So the sales strategy is really making sure that you understand how you will actually manage your leads. It's a simple question, but surprisingly poorly executed from companies tiny to huge.
Yes.
So I've seen more than once a situation where we've turned on the marketing pipe and then all the leads come through and everyone goes, whoa, and they all go sideways because there's no one to catch them and manage those leads.
Exactly.
So really making sure that you have a process to manage that lead process and that you have trained your sales force in the messaging. I see that a lot, where marketing has their messaging and sales is doing whatever they're doing, which has nothing to
Yeah.
do with the messaging. Yeah. So then the customer is being sold something that isn't actually what they get delivered, right? So then you wonder why you have a customer service problem later, right? So making sure that that whole alignment is occurring so that your sales team is delivering the message you want them to deliver. And then also on the back end of that, that you have a process for collecting, capturing, and managing those leads in a time-efficient manner. Again, this is really simple stuff, but it's surprising how many, not even just little companies, big companies, who shall remain unnamed, fail on these things. And so we do a lot of work with them on that.
Even just thinking about the funnel of marketing, you have the marketing messages, you're getting people coming into the funnel. What do you do with them at that point? It's so difficult. There's so many different customer relationship management softwares. There's how do you actually convert that lead into a close, and how often do you message them? How do you provide them with value? The idea is you're providing them with value. You're not trying to sell them something. You're trying to provide them with value. So, and then, like you were saying, how the salespeople are aligned with marketers, and the salespeople are providing feedback to engineers and designers.
Exactly.
There's all
putting that back into the loop and saying, here's what customers are saying to us. That's really important, and that's often a channel that's not happening. It's it's product design. They throw that over the fence to marketing. They throw it to sales. And it's all these isolated groups, right? And then we wonder why customers are like, I don't understand. I'm not going to buy because I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as you have that sort of, I don't get it, customers will just say, forget it. Move on.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how many of those things we do wrong, and it's like all of them. So we got a lot.
Like I said, many people do, and it's not that you need to get, there's 10 elements, and they're out of 10, it comes to 100, it's nice math. You don't have to get 10 out of 10 on these to be successful. You just need to have most of them sort of working. You don't want to have 3 of them at a 1 or a 3. You want to have most of them at like 6 or above.
And then, like you were saying, at least if you're aware of all 10, then when something pops up and fizzles up, then you can like capture it and be like, oh, I get it, I know what to do with it.
Right.
And then you can go and upgrade yourself from a 4 to a 6 in that category.
That's exactly. The reason I wanted to get the book out is because I wanted to get this information to as many people as possible, because I realized that we can isolate them, we can manage them, we can measure these.
Yes.
So therefore, let's get this out there so that more companies can be successful.
Yes.
Because it's painful to develop a company. People have ideas and visions, and they pour their heart and soul into it. And just from a cosmos perspective, that breaks my heart.
And the idea that's trying to be realized through that person is then dies. And, and it's sad because it's like you spent 2 years kind of like raising a child.
Right, and totally. Yeah. It's totally, I have a 20-year-old and I have my business, and they are 2 children. It's very much like raising a child, and I think when you are able to pour that heart and soul into something and bring it to the world, that adds to our world. And when it doesn't, it takes some light out of the world. And so I've seen so many great technologies fail because they were poorly marketed or poorly positioned or missed on some of these key elements. And it wasn't that it wasn't great technology that we needed. Might bend to sort of to technology because of where we are, but this could be said of almost any kind of company. And they don't make it to market, not because the product wasn't great. And that is a loss for all of us.
Yeah. A great product, and then one of these other pillars is missing, and the confusion when somebody's trying to purchase it and trying to understand who you are.
Exactly.
These last 2 are really important, team and funding. So 9 team is probably one of the most important pillars in this whole mixture. We were talking about it there earlier, having values aligned, mission aligned people, and then also people want to transition to different roles and all this different stuff. So knowing about that, knowing when to hire, funding. I like to always say this, and we're going to open up one of your decks that talks about the amount of women that are in both venture capital as well as entrepreneurship, startups, and technology, and really interesting things. How Kevin O'Leary is making greater returns on female founders, which is very interesting. So, regarding funding, though, it seems as though everyone and their mother is trying to raise money, and it's become kind of crazy that.
Everyone and their mother. What is that?
It's like a.
Come on.
Yeah, you're like trying to like make it understandable that it's like everyone and their mother is raising money. Everyone and their mother is building apps right
in
now.
Silicon Valley, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
in Silicon Valley. So now, funding is something that's to certain companies is crucial for maximizing their growth and impact fast, hiring people fast, etc. To other companies, it is almost like I don't need to raise money.
Absolutely. It's not the right path for everyone, completely. And there's actually a lot of research that's coming out about female founders in particular, that they, whether by choice or by forced into it, they tend not to build businesses that really need that kind of funding. Does that mean that those businesses are not important? Absolutely not. I mean, I was in an incubator this morning with 9 companies and 11 women who are founding important things that need to be brought out into the world. Not all of those companies will require venture funding.
Yep.
And frankly, once you say, okay, I'll accept your venture money, you have a target on your back. So you better really want that venture money, because you've got a timeline and you've got to meet those timelines, and there's a lot of pressure that you don't have when you don't take venture funding.
That's
so it's
huge.
Not for everyone.
I like how you brought that up. It's this target on your back, the timeline, someone's like, hey, when am I going to get my money back?
Yes.
When am I going to get my money back?
That's a never-ending refrain.
Never-ending. And then another interesting plus for not taking money is that it almost lights the fire under your ass to become profitable faster.
Yes. And that's, again, to just speak about the female founder experience, many of the companies run by women tend to make money the old-fashioned way through customers, as I joke about it.
The old-fashioned way?
The old-fashioned way. Instead of getting VC money, they make money through customers and
revenue.
Sales, it's like a novel concept in Silicon Valley, right? So that is typically more common in a female founder environment. And again, it's not necessarily for everyone to do a VC raise, and you just need to be very aware of what you're doing when you do a VC raise, because it does not come without strings. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure here to raise around, right? It's the thing,
gosh,
right?
Yeah.
But it's not always the best thing for every company. So we don't go into a lot of detail about funding from that perspective in this book and the next book, but we do talk about the fact that you need to make sure you have to have enough money to make money.
Yep.
So if you're going to be trying to raise awareness, you need to have money to do that. You need to have that money ready and available. It can't be a promise from a VC next year if you want to get the launch done, 6 months from now. You need to have that money now. So again, I see that happen more than once, where there's been a situation where they haven't had the funding's coming, and they're kind of caught in this never land where they're trying to launch, but they don't have the money yet in their bank account, and so you can't get the right things set up to launch properly. So that is something where I have seen companies fail because, that sort of runway has had a gap.
I forgot which famous venture capitalist it was that says sales cures everything.
Yes, I don't remember who that was, but I love that phrase because it's true.
So true. Yeah.
Yes, it's very true.
Sales cures everything. So whatever you're building into the world right now, just get people behind you that believe in it, and go and get that first. And
there's so many great options now. I mean, crowdfunding is this amazing tool because you raise awareness, and they're not just giving you likes on Facebook, they're actually paying for your product, right? So it's market testing, it's getting your early adopters, it's getting some cash that gets you to have enough money to actually produce said product or produce said whatever it is.
It's literally what we're
whatever.
Going through right now on Patreon.
I love it, yes.
And it's what we're going through right now is that there's people that believe in us that chime in anywhere from $5 a month to $500 a month that help this grow. And then the same thing happens on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and with all these companies that are doing something in hardware or software or whatever, that people are paying in $250 for a product, and it's just for an idea.
Right.
And then they go and they take their couple $100,000 they raise, and then they go and make it. So, you're right. It's never impossible. There's so many different ways to do it, and the only thing that makes it impossible is me, the person that says I can't do that.
I can't do that, you know. And so there's definitely many more options than there were even 10 years ago for
Yeah.
raising money. So, there's a lot of great angel investors out there who, they want their money back, but it's a little different than working with a VC.
Standard VC,
They tend to be much more, investing their expertise, their connections in you.
Yep.
So that's something, friends and family are always out there. That's always good to get. But, certainly I'm a big fan of crowdfunding, especially for women. And again, the research is showing that that is something that they tend to be more effective at. And then that shows well when you actually do go to raise money, because you're like, look, we have 500 people on Indiegogo that signed up for the product and already love it. And,
Yep.
you get early traction with money,
Yep.
which is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
So,
I'm really happy that you wrote this, and I think, again, like you said, the essence that you communicate to me at the beginning is just this feeling of lost potential. That there's these 90+% of businesses that are failing, high-tech businesses that are failing by 2 years in. What are we missing as a civilization because we didn't have really strong mentorship, really strong guidelines like this for launching businesses successfully into the world? So I love that principle so much about why you wrote that. So, and this is so funny because your background, aquatic ecology.
yes.
It's so interesting that you did the master's there, and then you got yourself into the last 15 years now of marketing, think results marketing, working with Intel, Microsoft Ventures. So like maybe walk us through a little bit about, I'd love to know
How
like,
I got here.
yeah. Give me something really fun about the aquatic ecology, like, because you obviously love that. And then you ended up moving into the marketing, and then what have been some of the cool things that you've been learning that of course you wrote into the book, but also just from actual physical interactions with these different companies and what you've been like learning from them and thought was really interesting.
So just kind of to sort of explain my transition, which is seems a bit severe, but I actually moved to the U.S. now, was it 24 years ago?
From where?
From Canada.
From Canada?
Yes,
Hey.
I'm Connect. So I'm a dual citizen now. I became a citizen in 2000. That was very exciting. But when I moved here, I thought, well, it's kind of a new start, and I really love field work. I loved being on the boats, even though I was the only woman, with a bunch of guys swearing like a sailor. I had the worst potty mouth. Because you have to be credible with the guys, right? You've got to swear just like the guys.
Like they do, yeah.
So I love the field work. I could do field work all day long. If I was a trust fund baby, don't pay me, I'll just do field work. I love that. But sitting in the lab counting samples
drove you nuts. Yeah.
because I'd count 5 samples and I got the trend, and then I have 374 more to do before I can publish my paper.
Yeah, and then
And
there's
another
the
9
pipetting
months
now, the
of
machining.
counting. Yes.
These machining that are helping in the lab are so crucial.
I was sitting at a microscope counting baby
Oh,
little rotifers and zooplankton and stuff. And I just thought, I can't do this. I know that I could become a professor, and then I have grad students who do what I'm doing, but I don't think I can make it to that point. So then we moved here to the US, and I thought, well, I really love the communication part. I did a lot of communication with farmers. I know that sounds crazy, but water quality. So their kids are swimming at the beach, right? That water comes from the stream that belongs to 10 different farmers' farms. And then their cows are trampling the sides of the banks, causing silting, which then causes algae growth in the beach or the lake. Mm-hmm. So having just very basic conversations that they're like, wow, I hadn't connected that.
The dot, yeah.
Right? And so having those conversations, and then doing a lot of work, I was working with provincial government and federal government in Canada, and talking about why some of the research that we were doing that seemed very esoteric and kind of, like, why are we funding this? Explaining how that might impact human health. And so that was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just try this and see how it goes. I had a standing offer to work at Dr. Charles Goldman's lab at UC Davis. He's the head researcher for Lake Tahoe. He's like the god. My girlfriend still can't believe that I turned it down.
We would love to do like a show on some kind of crazy complex ecology like that. Yeah.
He's so great. So we did talk, and I did do some communications for him. But so I thought, okay, I have a plan B that's like in the bag with like the top researcher in the world to work in his lab. I'm going to give myself 6 months to try this scientific communications thing and see if it works. So by the end of the 6 months, I think I was telling you earlier, I was writing for Discovery Channel Online, I was ghostwriting for local physicians in the paper, I was running the Davis Food Co-op newsletter, I was running the Putty Creek newsletter. I'm like, whoa, yeah, like I'm so busy I could hardly eat or sleep. So I said, I think this is working. And then I moved to the Bay Area and sort of fell into tech marketing and loved it. Mm-hmm. So, but the one thing that I found is that having a science background means that I can sit down with engineers and talk about the most arcane, weird, nitty-gritty technical stuff, and I can follow right along with them. Because my brain is trained to do that, even though I'm blonde and blue-eyed and I don't look like I can handle it. And I have had that experience where the scientists are like, whoa, where did you come from, when I start asking them questions about their research. So it's actually been handy to have that because I'm very comfortable in deep technical discussions or reading scientists' original papers and getting the gist of what they're doing before we then write about that technology and make it explainable to the rest of the world.
Yep.
So I love doing that, and so it's really what we do now is I know you've done some of this work, is taking things that are really difficult to explain and making them simple and understandable to everyone else who's not necessarily doing that all day long.
Yeah. Damn, I wish that there was more examples of people's minds being expanded to the awareness that like, hey, I'm like judging you, but holy shit, you know so much. So right. It's like once you have that experience, you kind of stop judging people because you realize that like this person, I know nothing about them. So I may as well just ask them the question and then see how they answer, and then based on their answer, then I can see, oh, they are scientifically literate, or they know more about marketing than I do, or they are from a different place in the world than I suspected they were. So you got to ask a question instead of assume. Right. And I'm really happy that you bring this up because like we'll dive into this in this whole like judging somebody without even knowing anything about them. But I'm really happy that you also mentioned this kind of like, your background going through the lab work, going through the like tons of different journals and publications that you're working on, knowing how to make things relatable, and then jumping into high tech. It was like, hey, like I'm keeping up with engineers, I'm keeping up with scientists, and then I'm able to help them disseminate in relatable ways. Totally what we care about as well. It's really interesting. There'll be some interesting collabs as we go on, and both with the people that we feature to help with think results marketing, but also just like as we get to wanting to get to sports stadiums, we need to figure out how to actually
I love it.
do that and get there.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. So let's pull up. Actually, before that, let's ask you quick about as you've worked with like Microsoft Ventures and Intel, like what have been some of these like really interesting takeaways that you think would be important to share?
I think, especially for my startups, they always think that the larger companies have endless resources, and they do and they don't. In terms of intellectual resources, yeah, they have endless resources. But every company, no matter what their size, has a limited budget, limited time, and limited resources to do what they need to do. It's just that when you work with Intel or Microsoft Ventures or SAP or any large company, they have a much bigger market that they need to attack. So they need a much larger budget to do that. It seems humongous to my startups, but to the size of the budget, the proportion is about the same. It's still not enough. So you still have to make decisions about how are you going to spend your marketing dollars in a way that really preserves your time, your energy, your money, and your resources.
Yeah.
No matter who you are. And I think that is something that kind of stuns my startups when I work with them. They're like, oh, well, if we had the money of, if you had the money of Intel to work on your little market, you'd be fine. Yeah. But Intel has this massive market that they need to cover with their budget, and percentage-wise it's about the same as what you have.
Yep.
So, don't think that any company has unlimited resources, other than they have amazing amounts of brain power in big companies. But then the problem is, how do you access that? So I worked with a company at Microsoft Ventures that just got acquired by Workday, Rally Team, and their whole thing was many large companies hire people like us, but there's actually that experience and expertise internally, but they don't know how to find it. So like essentially a LinkedIn for finding people inside your own company. because that's the difficulty. They do have those resources, but they don't know how to tap it
Yeah.
or how to find those people.
Yeah. It's like once you have a couple thousand people, then how do you figure?
Kind of lose track of them all.
Lose track of them all.
Like what they do.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember when I was at PeopleSoft years ago, we started basically a talent management, software piece. And so we had to fill out this form about things that we knew how to do. And of course, this was my job. And I listed out, okay, I can do, I had a checkbox, and then there were some kind of open fields. And so I listed sort of all of these things that I knew how to do that, were not in my job. And my boss was like, holy cow. And I'm like, I just checked the box.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was probably true for a lot of people was, people know you for doing the job that you do, but they don't know that you have these other things, which could be like, I'm awesome at, playing guitar. So like next time we have an employee event, let me come in and do a concert.
Totally.
It could be something that's not necessarily work related,
Exactly.
but if it's never been discussed, if you're kind of introverted, you may not necessarily be shouting from the rooftops, I have these 17 other skills.
Yes.
And so that's one of the problems with big companies. They have endless resources, but they don't know who they are, where they are, how to find them, how to leverage that. So that's a problem.
That's such a good example. Here's you, talking in front of people, and all these people, they're not just one-trick ponies. This isn't just someone that can only do one thing. These
Right.
are people that understand other things as well. And if you
Multi-dimensional people, imagine that.
imagine that, and then if we can figure out how to unleash their
Right.
skill sets, like you even said, just as simple as like play the guitar at the company gathering,
Right. Who
because you
knows?
know how to do that. Like, let's do
Exactly.
it. And then somebody will be like, remember that time that you played the guitar? Like, that was amazing, whatever.
Right.
So you're unleashing people's full potentials in different domains. And I like how you mentioned that. I like how you mentioned the proportionate marketing budgets. I think that was really interesting as well, because we just have, for simulation, we just have a much smaller market right now. Our marketing budget is pretty much nothing, and but ideally we have this massive market, but we don't, because we don't yet know how to like fully tap into that and leverage marketing dollars like maybe a company like Intel does at this point. So it's actually really good that you teach us about that. So okay, let's bring this up, because this is a deck that you've been kind of teaching, and we're going to get this up on our NDI connection. Ronnie, you got it, right?
Stand by.
Cool.
Stand by.
Is this Changing Tides?
This is Changing Tides. This is what
Okay.
you talk about
Yeah,
in Changing Tides.
I'm teaching that on Thursday.
Yes. So let's quickly talk about Changing Tides, because this book's going to be released in fall. So we have a
With my left hand, right?
yeah.
Well, I was doing both books at the same time, which is making me primarily crazy and psychotic.
Yeah.
I'll explain the story how we ended up with with two books in one
Well, we
year.
have pictures of the book.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's
Let's-
cute though. I like
Cool.
So yeah. so-
Powerful strategies for female founders.
Yes.
And so this is going to be released in a couple months, and we have the link in the bio for Launching for Revenue, and Changing Tides is going to be coming out soon. And a lot of what you are teaching in here is really just the maximizing the success of the female founders.
Yes.
And how we're just making a slow transition. And there's so many skill sets that women know how to tap into, about energy and about empathy and about feeling and all these different things that men are not. This isn't meant to be like some binary sort of like only this and only
Right.
that thing.
Of
It's
course.
just it's just
Typically, men are not
nuance.
trained in those skills.
Yeah.
It's not that they can't do them. They're just typically not socially trained in those skills.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a continuum. I've been told more than once that I have, bigger balls than some men, and I said, well, that says more about you than it does about me.
What, do you think? Who do you think would win in a scrap between you and I?
Who would win in a scrap?
I think you'd win.
You think you can kick my ass?
When it comes to intellectual stuff, we might bar it out, but physical, I'm not going to win. Got it.
Jen, that's an ongoing joke. I ask people that.
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. I'm sorry to make sense.
It's-
Go through the deck. What else you
Yeah,
got there?
yeah. So here's a Machiavelli quote.
I love Machiavelli.
Yeah.
I gave this morning to the incubator group, and I think he had a lot of good things to say, and it's also a bit of a private nod to my grandmother, who was incredibly Machiavellian.
Yeah? Your
Oh,
grandmother was?
Oh yeah.
How was she
If
Machiavellian?
it was about the family, totally did not matter how she got there, as long as she protected the family.
Yeah, yeah.
She had no morals when it came to the rest of the world, just
Damn.
protecting us.
Damn, that's all 15-minute timer. Thank you, Ronnie.
She was a character.
Because this is like, that's
But it's a great quote.
Protection of genetic lineage is so interesting.
Oh yeah. So
And
that's another story. But I love this quote because this really sums up. I mean, we work a lot with companies who are launching for the first time. They're moving into new markets. There's just a lot of unknown. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of change management that has to happen. And so when I read this, I was like, yes, that is what we do. And that is exactly, it just captures the whole spirit of the moment when you're trying to launch a new company. Because we always run into this, and that's my next book after this one, which is half written, is what happens when you hit the wall in a launch. Because invariably in every launch, at some point, the CEO typically, or someone else, is going to go, the fear comes.
Sometimes walls happen every day.
Right.
But they're little walls.
Right,
Yeah.
but there's usually a big one at some point when there's the whole like, maybe we shouldn't do this launch, and like this whole sort of self-doubt starts to happen. Usually it's just about as the vision starts to really take hold.
You got to drive a fucking tank through that wall.
Right, it's very, very predictable when this is going to happen. And so that's why I ended up doing neuro-linguistic programming coaching, because now I realize I have to like help my clients through that wall.
And then your family's like, don't take the risk, just take the job.
Yeah,
it's so
just
easy.
get a job.
You know, yeah.
Just get a job, get a real job. My other grandmother used to say to me all the time, so when are you going to get a real job again, honey?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, I have one.
I have one. Yeah, it's a real job.
She
and
did
I
not,
work for myself.
She
and it's
did not
fantastic.
understand that. You know, I left, 2 fantastic companies, to start Think Results, and she just thought that was insane. Like, go get a normal job, honey.
So you know what else this reminds me of was the quotes about the when you look at the world, the people that are comfortable with the world, they're not the ones that make change.
Yes.
The ones that want to challenge the status quo are the ones crazy enough to believe in them, are the ones that take the risk and go and do it. And you got to be able to take the risk and to make this new order of things. So, okay, so jumping into so 2%.
2% of VC funding goes to women.
Damn. And is this from 2018?
2017. The new number should come out in October, but I'm not expecting it to be much higher. Frankly.
Wow.
Maybe a little, but I'm not expecting. I mean, it needs to be significantly higher, obviously. Now that said, there are not as many female founders, which is another problem.
That's 8%?
17% of founders are female.
Okay.
So
and
that's
8% are venture capitalists?
8%, I think it's 9% now are venture capitalists that are female.
And
so
17% are founders, at least that's,
that are female,
that's way higher than 2%. Yeah,
right, so clearly, because people say, oh, well, how many people, what percentages of companies are run by women?
Yeah.
Well, it's not 2%, it's 17%, which is not great. I mean, we need to make that better.
Yes,
But there's a lot of factors that conspire to keep women out of the system.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm really passionate about, and sort of happened through, kind of through research, but also just, last summer, when the Justin Callback and Dave McClure stories came out, I was actually on a writing retreat, powering through 7 chapters of that book. And these stories came out. I was supposed to be offline, but I was still kind of following things. And these stories came out, and I felt like somebody had ripped a Band-Aid off my arm, and the blood would not stop flowing. I don't know exactly what it was, but I was like, I can no longer remain silent about what I know is going on in Silicon Valley, what I know happened to me, to colleagues of mine, and the things that I heard from female founders, at various companies I've worked with over the years. And I started to dig into the research, and it was even worse than I thought.
And I think the path to rehabilitation is the thing that we highlight the most here as we talk about these things. It's like there have been incredibly crappy things that have happened from thousands of years ago, from hundreds of years ago, and even from a decade or a couple of years ago. And it's like, how do we rehabilitate? We have PTSD, societal PTSD that we're fixing right now. And I'm happy that we're unpacking more of the conversations and moving forward with rehabilitation.
Right. So it was really before the Me Too movement that I started writing Changing Tides, and that's when I decided I had to do a second book while I was writing another book. And then Me Too happened, and that has, been a really positive thing to really raise the awareness. I think a lot of men, even men that I know, including my husband, who is amazing and who's very aware, he was stunned. He knew my experiences, but didn't really realize how much women spend their lives sort of watching over their shoulders.
And then the other extreme, the like looking over the shoulders thing is very fucked and needs to be changed. Societally needs to be changed. Just a much more gentle, loving, caring approach to dynamics between people. But then also this like other side of the story is also messed up. Like Mike Pence doesn't take meetings with women alone anymore. Like things like that. I'm like, come on, we got to figure this out, because this is. We got to be able to have like you can come on to our show without feeling exactly. We got to figure out how to.
And you need to be not afraid to have a woman on your show, because she might say something.
Yeah.
No.
So
Exactly.
so here we're again we're indicating the amount of female founded companies that are
Right.
it's like
It's the little blue. It's hard to see. It's so small. Yes, exactly.
it's slowly increasing, but.
Yeah.
It's really time to rocket that up, because I think that once we rocket that up, we're going to see some interesting things unfold, like, women being higher in agreeableness than men, and being more disagreeable. It's like, what would a company look like that focus on a value of like empathy and a focus on these different sort of values of camaraderie that are slightly different than men?
Did you hear Obama? I think it was last week. He said, I think we need to have women run things around here, because I'm really kind of done with men."
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, they need to work together. I don't know. We
Yeah.
need to just come together. We
Yeah.
can't just completely give
Right.
women, we have to be careful.
Well,
I just want to say that.
Yeah, and then also just like seeing what the Iran-U.S. that communication that just happened. It's like, what would have it looked like if we were to just meditate a bit more and just slow down and be like, objectively, how can we work better together across the earth? Because this yelling at each other.
It's not working.
Yeah, and
definitely not
it's a
working.
small rock, and we definitely don't want to see any World War III shit happen. So
Yes.
yeah. So what's 4.4%?
So 4.4%, I believe that is the value of, the total number, so the number of deals by gender. It's kind of rather than we're looking at 2%. So
Yeah. It's really, yep.
the number of deals. And then the next one, this 5 million. So women tend to get, this is kind of comparative value of deal size. So women tend to get a little bit over $5 million per deal, and men get a little bit under, or male-led companies, a little under $12 million. So that's quite a difference.
And that's like a Series A round, or what is that, a B round?
It's just overall kind of the total value of the amount of deals kind of on average. So a lot of this is very average.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So yeah, they didn't break it down, I don't think, by what series. You can do some of those cuts, but this didn't do that.
And this is the percentage that are venture capitalists and the percentage that are in founders?
Yes,
Okay.
and that has gone up somewhat, so with female founders. So then this actually has, I think there's 100 in this, on the actual,
Yeah.
the actual research has all of them, but basically which firms have the most female partners. So this was a presentation that I gave to the Google Female Founder Summit. It was the keynote in March.
Awesome.
And so really I was trying to give them information, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be looking at the firms that have more female founders if you're trying to get funding. It's not that men don't, tend to give, well, they don't, but it's not that men won't give you money, but you're more likely to get money if you're going to go to a female VC. You're more likely to get money if you go to a corporate VC. You're more likely to get money if you work with an accelerator that has female partners. Let's make these things easy, because a lot of things for women are just that much harder. We don't have the mentorship, we don't have the examples, we don't have the support along the way that men have typically gotten. And so this was trying to sort of level that playing field for them and saying, here's some tips to make your sailing just a little bit smoother, which might make the difference between you saying, I can't do this anymore,
Yeah.
and staying in business, which is tough
Yep.
for anyone, but it's doubly tough
Yep.
for women. And I can't remember what this one is for sure. These are kind of getting into the details. I think some of these are things like new partners, new firms. So many of the new firms tend to be more female friendly. They tend to more likely be founded by a woman. And then there's also some good research, which I think was the prior slide, about corporate VCs tend to be more female friendly, and probably because they're coming out of sort of an HR environment. That's one of the challenges with female founders, is that they're working in this very much Wild West. There is absolutely no protection for a female founder. Hey, let's meet at the bar and we'll talk about your business, and then you get there and it's not what it's about, right? There's no one to go to. There's no protection. So I think that's probably why sometimes the corporate VCs tend to be a little better with female founders and tend to put more money into female founders. So, and then new firms, there's a big increase in female-founded companies. That's been happening as well, so that's nice. This is really super important research from Harvard Business Review. Basically what this is...
just like that story's still so stuck in my head about just going out to talk about a business.
Oh, I can't tell you how many times that's happened.
Just come on, like make it more clear, like what the intentions are, and
We had this discussion on one of the female founder groups I'm on Facebook, and together with several other there's like 6,000 female founders on there. But
it's like a little bit primordial also. It's just
Yes.
this feeling that's like, okay, well, I am both attracted to the business that you're doing,
Right.
but also to you maybe. And like, maybe if I said it in a way that was a little bit, just, straightforward, like, hey, maybe I'd be interested in going on a date sometime, and like,
Right.
and just see what the other person has to say, and don't be pushy. Like, no, okay, great. Like, I'll still be willing
Yes.
to, talk to you about business and stuff. But
the problem is, in that situation, there's an extreme power dynamic, because you've
Yeah.
got typically a male VC who has a lot of money and a lot of power over whether or not that business is successful.
yeah,
And then you've got a female founder who doesn't have money, who doesn't have power, who really needs this money and power
Yes.
to make her vision succeed. So it's
Yeah.
a very imbalanced dynamic. And whenever you have a really imbalanced dynamic, there's a really high likelihood there's going to be something going wrong.
that's a very good point. Yeah.
So this is super important research, and I do this as an exercise with my female founders. So basically, the research showed that VCs tend to ask male founders questions about promotion, like, what's your vision for the company? How are you going to acquire customers? Kind of painting a big picture. Then they tend to ask women prevention questions. What are you going to do to reduce customer churn? How are you going to defend against the competition?
Why?
Because that's what we tend to do. So the problem with this is that the researchers then went on to study these founders and sort of their raises over the next couple of years, and kind of corrected for size of company, experience of founders, all those things. And they found that for every prevention-oriented question that was asked, they went on to raise $3.8 million less per question.
Damn.
Per question. That's a significant difference.
So promotion's much more. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And because we are humans, there's good news in this research. Because we are humans, we tend to answer questions as they're asked, right? Our mirror neurons say, if you ask me a promotion question, I'm going to give you a promotion answer.
Versus a prevention answer.
Right.
But
However,
they can also be paired together as well, because it's important to know. Yeah,
So if you ask a female founder prevention question, and she does what entrepreneurs do and doesn't do what's expected, and turns it around into a promotion-oriented answer and says, yes, we're concerned about customer churn, but let me talk about how we're going to gain customers to make sure that that's a minimal issue in our business, blah, blah, blah. She will go on to raise $7.9 million more per question.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So it's like the mindset, the ability
Right.
to transition to a promotional answer.
Right.
I want to make sure that we highlight this.
Yes.
At least on here, this is really important. It's like we have these very powerful female founders with billion-dollar valuations. It's just really amazing to see this. Stitch Fix, Houzz, TaskRabbit, Rent the Runway, these are all very popular companies today. And this is awesome. And when I initially saw this, I was like, wow, just wait until more of the Gen Zers.
And there's a whole, cohort behind these four. And there's a lot of talk about in the next 3 to 5 years seeing several, billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies run by women coming out.
Hell yeah, and it's good seeing like 18, 19-year-olds that are like coming up that are really powerful as well.
Exactly.
So this was really important as well. Like Kevin O'Leary's getting better returns with female founders, which is very interesting. It's like, I wonder how much venture capital is actually experiencing higher returns for female founders, and why? Why is it?
Many of them are. They're not always tracking that data. But I know one of my contributors for Changing Tides is Suzanne Fletcher from Stanford StartX, which is basically the Stanford kind of incubator. And so she's tracked data and is definitely seeing the female-founded companies have better survivability. They tend to raise more money, which is interesting because that's kind of not typical data. They tend to meet their reinforces this exactly. And so, the question becomes, not only is this a social issue, this is a business issue. Why is money not following money? If it makes good business sense to invest in women, then why are we not doing it? I don't know the answer to that.
Let's figure out the business, the numbers behind it, and let's explore this more. And
there's a ton of research that I'll talk about in the book, but about the fact that there's actually plenty of business evidence that having women, and this has certainly been shown in the corporate world, if, for example, you have women, a gender diverse board, a gender diverse C-level team, 15% increases in your returns. If you have a gender diverse and a racially diverse and ethnically diverse, that's 35%. So
I want more of that research. Can you send me that research?
Yeah.
I want to identify more of that research. When we initially talked to Jordan Peterson in February, we were having an in-depth conversation with him about the nuance behind all of this. That is it possible that a board that brings on people from different ethnicities from around the world, they have different philosophies maybe about how companies should be run. They maybe have different sorts of strategies for marketing and monetization. They know how to hit the hearts of different people across the world, all this different kind of stuff. And Jordan was very clear that no, there's no research on that. And so now
McKinsey.
I want to take some of this McKinsey research. I want to understand it more, pass it along to him, unpack it more. Why are female founders getting higher returns? How many of them are? It's exciting stuff to figure out. Just a couple quick questions on the way out that we typically like to ask on the show. Jen, do you think we're alone in the cosmos?
Absolutely not.
Tell us a little more why.
It's just biologically speaking, it just can't be. It doesn't make sense to me as a scientist that we are the only thinking life form. It just the odds are not there. I don't see how that's possible.
And then do you think that...
I can't wait, but...
I can't wait either, I know. We got James Webb Space Telescope coming up. We got all these cool things that we're building to see. And then how about, we just learned about Louvoir. Louvoir, it's in the kind of like multi-decade plan of NASA, but it's going to really be able to image the atmospheric compositions of these exoplanets to be like, look, there's oxygen and carbon and
water.
And yeah, exactly. So do you think that this could be a simulation?
I do.
Yeah. Why?
There's times in my life when I'm like, I just feel like it's just not, I'm not running the show.
Yeah.
I just have that feeling.
That feeling of you've lost,
I feel like a
free will's
puppet
not there.
sometimes. It's very deterministic, and I think, am I really in charge here?
Yeah. Your microbiome's more in charge sometimes.
Absolutely.
You're just like, you didn't even think about going over to the fridge. You just magically appeared next to the fridge.
Right. So yeah, it has occurred to me. I know that sounds crazy, but it has occurred to me. But we just sort of keep going as if we are really in charge of our lives, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's more fun that way.
I'm glad that you're very, you've thought about it more than just the classic kind of, oh no, there's no way. That's a classic answer, that we get, and it's great to be able to actually unpack some more of the truth behind the lack of free will that we experience at times.
Right.
Yeah. Because is it really you that is? That is walking on the beach and you see, if you're a woman and you see a very attractive man without a shirt on, is that really you that is coming up with this thought of like, oh, he's so hot or she's so hot or whatever? Or is that more like this primordial sense within you that you can't even control, you're just physically attracted?
Yes, and I don't know how much of that is biological and how much of that is someone, kind of running me, but there definitely are times when I feel like, wow, I am really not in charge here. Like something else is in charge. I'm not sure what it is, but something else is in charge.
Looking at the menu, there's two options. It's like, how did I pick that option? How did I pick that pair of jeans? How did I really just like still unpack further?
Absolutely.
What do you think's, last question, what do you think's the most beautiful thing in the world?
Love. And
unpack that more. Why?
I think it's the most, and as a scientist, this is kind of shocking to me, but as I've gotten older, I've mellowed. And so I think that is such a powerful force. I think that when you have those moments of, and I mean love in the bigger sense, it doesn't necessarily mean kind of, between, spouses, but, loving your work, loving the experience of doing this, loving the earth. There's all kinds of moments when you forget who you are and you're just in that connection to the bigger world. And I think for me, that's the definition of love. And I mean, that's what I love to do with my clients, is get them to that point where they see something bigger, and I love that. And so that is, to me, the most beautiful thing in the world, is just that moment of possibility. And that could be in a romantic relationship, it could be with work, but it's that brief moment when we just feel like we've just touched the universe. To me, that's love.
With like a love romantically with maybe a parent or a kid
Ideas.
Or idea. Oh, I like that.
Work, your focus, when you get in that flow, to me, that's love for your topic.
Yeah, it's ethereal.
Yes.
So subtle and so deeply kind of like transcendent of just this body. It's
exactly.
Else.
So to me, that's the most beautiful thing, is that moment when we feel connected to the universe. And to me, that's what love is.
Jenn LeBlanc, what a pleasure this has been. Thank you very much for coming on to the show. Yeah, I'm glad you had a good time.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And for all those, thinkresultsmarketing.com, the link's in the bio, go check it out. Also, definitely check out Launching for Revenue, the link's in the bio as well. Really think about how we can maximize more of these ideas into the world. Like, can we follow awesome guidelines and procedures and also expand ourselves even past those as well? But can we really take these principles and apply them to maximizing our business success? So if you guys had a good time, go and share with 2 other people what you learned, tell them about it, have them go start talking about it, and let's execute more of these. Don't just consume, go create this content, go make videos, go make blog posts, go start businesses, go and make with this. Join us, subscribe, comment below. We'd love to start a community talking about things like this. Also, join us on Patreon, help us continue supporting and growing this endeavor. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Ron, our director and producer. Much love, everybody.